to you. And it has just occurred to me that I bet you I've got about 1,500, probably close to 1,535 followers who don't know there's a live tab and that my videos are in that. And I know they're not looking at my playlists. So, hey, we're eventually going to have to do a whole series on critical thinking and critical listening. uh, it occurs to me that I'm going to have to teach you guys how to focus if I'm going to get you to focus. Because it's not going to occur to you that maybe I should just do this multiple times until I get better at it. Because maybe, maybe it's occurring to me that you don't realize that these things I'm good at in a way you're not good at because I practiced, because I wanted to be good at them. Because maybe it's never occurred to you that I'm not that guy who likes to read. Does any of you know this? I fucking hate reading. I don't read in my private time. I don't like pick up books and just quiet read. That's the most boring shit in the history of the universe. I've been putting myself to sleep by picking up a book and just looking into the fucking pages for decades of my life. I'm good at reading because I want to be, because I practiced. And the reading out loud is a skill that I have. It's surprising to me how many people don't realize I'm acting. I acted in high school, and really every opportunity people gave me to be on stage and to perform in grade school, I took. So like my first role as an actor was as the Wizard of Oz. So this whole unveiling, oh, don't look at the man behind the curtain act that you guys witness me doing every day, I've been doing since I was in fourth grade. Pay no attention to the man behind the camera, the man on the other side of the camera. Pay no attention to the man behind this face. Pay no attention to the man behind the shaggy. This is not Robert Longshore. Come on, guys. I didn't think these were, I thought I was being clever. I didn't think I was being uh, so mysterious that I was completely opaque. Not a bad problem, really. If what you're trying to do is write the best mystery ever written, um, if if it's so mysterious that it's completely opaque, then you've won. I've already won. I don't ever have to finish it. I can pull the Leonardo da Vinci and get my cake and my flowers and complete nothing too. It's pretty liberating knowing that I never have to write another word as Robert Longshore and I'm greater than anything you'll ever do. It's liberating. But we're going to move on from that. We are going to be reading for the foreseeable future from Richard S. Shaver. We're going to begin tonight with the first of the Shaver mysteries with I Remember Lemuria. This is one of those works. I know the light's glaring off my glasses is annoying. It's unpleasant to me too. Believe me, it hurts my eyes. Um, the Shaver Mysteries, like the book we just finished, The Coming Race, these works that I'm reading for you underscore and gird most of the ancient aliens and ancient uh, ancient aliens and alternate historian crowd, ancient aliens and alternate history crowd. These two books and form the backbone of their belief system. And so I would just, we're going to spook ourselves out in the name of Halloween with how fucking stupid the majority of the internet is. So if the shoe fits, we're going to read Richard S. Shaver's foreword to the collection I Remember Lemuria and Other Shaver Mysteries. Forward. Perhaps my parents never realized the puns that would be made on my name when they christened me Richard Sharp Shaver. Under ordinary circumstances, the puns would have been of little consequence. Okay, yep, I didn't notice it either, but Dick Shaver is pretty funny. Oh, he struggled in high school. Wow. Okay, so this guy and I are obviously going to be much more similar people than I and Edward Bulwer Lytton were. This guy begins on a dick joke. So, Dick Shaver and I are at least in the same ballpark. He got an actual genuine laugh out loud from me in his first sentence. So very, very good job so far, Mr. Shaver. That's hilarious. We're gonna start at the beginning because this is a very good dick joke. Perhaps my parents never realized the puns that would be made on my name when they christened me Richard Sharp Shaver. Under ordinary circumstances, the puns would have been of little consequence. But because of the amazing fact of my amazing memory of the life of another person long dead, it has been incredibly hard for me to speak convincingly and to make people believe in me. Actually, he and I are similar people in a lot of different ways. Invariably, I get that oh so funny remark, "Sharp shaver, eh? A regular cut up, eh, kid?" Accompanied by a sly dig in the ribs and a very stupid, "Get it? How can a man get a serious audience after that?" And yet, yeah, how do you get a serious audience calling yourself Shaggy? And yet, there it is, for all who wish, to pun and pun again. If I achieve nothing else, at least you may laugh, and to laugh is to be physically and mentally healthy. For those of you who will read on and carefully weigh what I am about to tell you, I am convinced there will be no thought of puns. Instead, when you consider the real truths behind what I say, and even better, experiment and study to corroborate them, it seems to me to be inevitable that you will forget that I am Richard Sharp Shaver, and instead am what science chooses to be very vaguely define as the racial memory receptacle of a man, or should I say a being, named Mutan Mayan, who lived many thousands of years ago in Sub-Atlan, one of the great cities of ancient Lemuria. I myself cannot explain it. I know only that I remember Lemuria. Remember it with a faithfulness that I accept with the absolute conviction of a fanatic. And yet, I am not a fanatic. I am a simple man, a worker in metal, employed in a steel mill in Pennsylvania. I am as normal as any of you who read this and gifted with much less imagination than most of you. What I tell you is not fiction. How can I impress that on you as forcibly as I feel it must be impressed? But then, what good to impress it upon those who will crack wise about me being a sharp shaver? I can only hope that when I have told the story of Mutan Mayan as I remember it, you will believe, not because I sound convincing or tell my story in a convincing manner, but because you will see the truth in what I say and will realize, as you must, that many of the things I tell you are not a matter of present-day scientific knowledge and yet are true. I fervently hope that such great minds as Einstein, Carroll, and the late Kreil check the things that I remember. I am no mathematician. I am no scientist. I have studied all the scientific books I can get, only to become more and more convinced that I remember true things. And surely someone can definitely say that I am wrong or that I am right, especially in such things as the true nature of gravity or matter or light, of the cause of age, and many other things that the memory of Mutan Mayan has expressed to me so definitely as to be conviction itself. This is interesting, because I have the same experience with Rob. This is interesting. I wanted to read this for my own purposes, because I may or may not believe that this exact thing is happening to me. I intend to put down these things, and I invite, nay, challenge any of you to work on them, to prove or disprove as you like. Whatever your goal, I do not care. I care only that you believe me or disbelieve me with enough fervor to do some real work on those things I will propound. I've said that exact sentence, except for the propound part. The final result may well stagger the science of the world. Now, you can decide for yourself whether I'm joking. But if you know me, I want to thank editor Ray Palmer. That's so funny. He and Palmer fall out hard hard at the end of this story in real time, not the end of these books as they were written down. Ray Palmer and Shaver fall out hard, hard. They fall out all the way to the point that Palmer actually tries to make Shaver look like a lunatic in public, tries to steal the intellectual property and all of the royalties and disappears. Like that kind of, they fell all the way out. This shit's interesting on its own right. I want to thank editor Ray Palmer, in whose fiction magazine, Amazing Stories, the stories in this book were first published, for his open mind and for the way he has received the things I have told him, in addition to what I have written in this story of Mutan Mayan of ancient Lemuria. It began when he published my ancient alphabet and discussions, and requested the readers to carry out checks of their own. I myself did not realize the extent of the alphabetic, more properly phonetic language, but surely there must be tremendous significance in the fact that the alphabet fits into every language to which it has been applied, to the amazing percentage of 75% in the German to 94% in the ancient Egyptian. Even in Chinese and Japanese, it ranked consistent 9 out of 10 times. That sounds like bullshit. To me, it is tragic that the only way I can tell my story is in the guise of fiction. And yet, I am thankful for the opportunity to do even this. And to editor Ray Palmer, I express my unbounded gratitude. I'll change his mind about that. I know that if even a few of you go to the lengths he has gone to check many of the things I remember, a beginning will have been made to something, the ending of which, if ending there is, awes me beyond my poor power to express my feelings. Oh, motherfucker. I have just the worst fucking tickle in my fucking throat. Okay, and now we have the words of our editor. January 1945 issue of Amazing Stories. Some of the reports by readers were subsequently published, but the great majority were known. These reports proved to be the most amazing the editor has ever received, or on anything published in his magazine. They would seem to indicate beyond all doubt that the ancient language of Mr. Shaver is part of an original mother tongue, from which all earthly language have sprung. For example, the name Mutan Mayan, broken down into the letters and sounds of this ancient language, becomes Mu, man, T, integration, growth. On, animal, Mayan means man-child seed. So the name means man spore cultured to new forms by integration growth forces. No, it doesn't. In other words, a synthetic mutation by the use of force or rays. Ed. And editor, which means Ray Dicknuts here. Let me find it. Palmer. Okay. Important. Important. The philologies that they're going to do here are bullshit. All right. Now we move into the title, and he does like I do. Lots of titles and subtitles. I Remember Lemuria is the title of our work. Thought records from the past tell the ancient story of Lemuria, which some call Mu or Pan, by Richard S. Shaver. His title, because he loves us, is a poem. Chapter 1, City of Titans. I was working in the studio of Arton Gros when I heard a great laugh behind me. If ever there was derision in a laugh, there was derision in this one. I flung down my gaudy brushes and my palette and turned about in a rage to find the master himself, his red cave of a mouth wide open and his black beard. I cooled my temper with an effort, for great indeed is Arton Gros, master artist of Sub-Atlan. I'm sorry, Mutan Mayan, he gasped, but I cannot control my laughter. No one has ever conceived, much less executed, anything worse than what you have put upon canvas. What do you call it? Proteus in a convulsive nightmare. But Arton Gros could control himself, I was sure. It is one of the things I have learned of the really great in the arts. They make no pretenses. He was laughing because he wanted to tell me frankly what he thought of my ability as an artist. It's bad enough when your friends mock your work, and they had. But when the master is convulsed with laughter, it is high time to wake up to the truth. Okay, so let's just be real clear here. Literature comes from typically a place of the artist. One of the things that Rob, if you're listening, talks about with his experience with me is that I inflect a lot of what he is trying to tell you because he's using my brain to get there. Richard Shavers just admitted to us within the first three paragraphs of his work that his friends and family laugh at his efforts at writing fiction. They laugh because it's bad. It's true, great Arton Grow, I say humbly. I want to paint, but I cannot. I haven't the ability. Arton Grow's expression softened. He smiled, and as he smiled, it was as though he had turned on the sunlight. Go, he said, go to the deeper caverns of Moo's Sinner. Once there, study science. Learn to mix the potions that give the brain greater awareness, a better rate of growth. He patted my shoulder and added a last bit of advice. Once you have mixed the potions, take them, drink them, and grow. He passed on, still chuckling. Why is the truth always so brutal? Or does it just seem brutal when it comes from those wiser than us? I slink from the studio, but I had already determined to take his advice. I would go to Theon City at Moose Center. I would go to the science schools of the Titans. Never before had I considered leaving Sub-Atlan, my birthplace, or as I should express it, my growth place, for I am a culture man, a product of the laboratories. In fact, I remember no other place on Mu, although it is a fact that during the process of my development to culture manhood, I roamed the culture forest of Atlantis, which is the name for surface Atlan. Sub-Atlan is just below Atlantis, while Theon City is located at the center of Mu, at a great depth below Sub-Atlan. The walls of the great cavern in which Theon City is located are hardened to untellable strength by treatment with ray flows which feed its growth until it is of great density. There are many other cities which grew through the centuries to vast size, but none so great as Theon City. Some are abandoned, but all are indestructible. Their cavern wall is too dense to penetrate or to collapse. Okay, I do have a question, just right out of the gate. Who the fuck is this guy talking to? Who's he describing this to? If he's talking directly to us in a sort of quasi second person storytelling mode, why is he doing such a bad job of describing where he's from? If you lived in the subway system below New York, you were writing a book. The way you would describe that subway system is not, we're below New York, and New York is the capital of New York. Because that wouldn't communicate anything to anyone. So the first thing we know is that as similar as Richard Shaver and I, we are different at I am not a bad writer. Since Theon City is located near the center of Mother Mu, gravity neutralizes itself by opposition. It is very comfortable. Many of the Titans live there, and in fact, it is almost a Titan city. He's talking about this stuff like he, Newton Buttface, thinks I know this stuff, these places. But he's also, Richard Shaver, conscious that we don't. It's very comfortable. Many of the Titans live there, and in fact, it is almost a Titan city. There also are the mighty ones. That happened. The elders of the Atlan race's government. Huge they are, like great trees many centuries old and still growing. I had long wished to see them, and now that I had decided to go, the thrill was greater than any I had ever experienced. I was going down into the city of many wonders. Out on the street, I took one of the many vehicles that are provided for travel about the city. These vehicles, their weight reduced by a gravity deflection device, are powered by motors whose energy is derived from a gravity-focusing magnetic field, by which one side of a flywheel becomes much heavier than the other. This is accomplished by bending gravity fall in the same way that a lens bends a light ray. That's not possible. The topless buildings of Sub-Atlan fled by me, and soon I neared the squat entrance to the shafts that fell from Sub-Atlan to Center Mu to Theon City, home of the Titans. I knew that swift elevators dropped down these shafts, but I had never traveled in one of them. Why is he telling us in this way? And the answer to all of these questions that I'm going to be asking are because Richard Shaver is a bad writer. He's a bad writer. He's not even publishing dimes. He's publishing in fucking Amazing Stories magazine. And then those of you are going to go, but isn't that the kind of place that Lovecraft published? And didn't you say he's a great writer? He's kind of not a great writer. Lovecraft is kind of a shit writer. And by kind of a shit writer, I mean totally a shit writer. Lovecraft is totally a shit writer. The literature that was in these magazines was disparaged at the time the magazines were being published because, like yours truly, on the internet, there's a lot of bullshit published where very poor people can buy it. Because I knew the control man of one of the elevators, having talked with him often of Taon City and the wonders he had seen in it, I went to his shaft for my descent. He was glad to see me and very much surprised to learn that I was going to Taon City. "You will never regret it," he declared. The car dropped sickeningly so swiftly that a great fear grew in me that I would be crushed by deceleration when we finally stopped. In panic, I watched an indicator's two hands move slowly toward each other as though to cover its face in shame. Then, with little sensation, the car stopped. Here at the center of Mu, I had become nearly weightless, and the ceasing of even such motion did not have ill effects upon my weightless body. I knew that I would not have that fear again. What? He doesn't understand how gravity works. So remember how he said that he wanted us to prove that his memories are true or false by the way science actually works? Gravity doesn't get weaker as you go into the planet. It gets much stronger. Idiots. Anyway. Two fat Atlans stepped out of the car ahead of me, sighing with relief as their renewed weightlessness, which they had obviously been anticipating. As I was about to follow them from the car, the control man drew me aside. "Fear rides the way down here," he whispered, his sharp-pointed cat-like ears quivering and alert. "Fear is a smell down here that is ever in the nose. A bad smell, too. Try to figure it out while you're down here, and tell me, too, if you get an answer." I did not understand what he meant, but I promised anyway. The smell of fear in Taon City? Immediately I was immersed in the sensually shocking appeal of a veriform crowd, mostly at this hour, a shopping rush of female veriforms. While there were many of my own type and of the elevator control man's type, there were a great number of creatures of every shape the mind could grasp, and some that it could not. All were citizens. All were animate and intelligent, hybrids of every race that space crossing had ever brought into contact, from planets whose very names are now lost in time. The Technicons may have been wrong in the opinion of some when they developed veriform breeding, but they've certainly given life variety. I had never seen so many veriforms before. He actually has this fucking footnoted, and I'm not reading these fucking footnotes. They don't have fucking hyperlinks in the text. So if he and whoever published this to Kindle don't respect my time more than that, I'm not going to respect his shit writing. At a corner of the vastly vaulted way, where many roll-out platforms crossed and recrossed each other, I stepped to a telescreen and dialed the student center. I'm realizing now that he's footnoting things that he doesn't have the skill as a writer to introduce and describe in an interesting way. The image of a tremendous six-armed Sibyl female filled the screen, and the electrically augmented body appeal of the mighty life within her seized the youth in me and wrung it as no embrace from lesser female ever had. I don't know what the fuck that means. "And what?" Her voice shook me as a leaf in a pipe organ. "Might a pale and puny male like you want in Taon City? You look as if you never had enough to eat, as if love had passed you by. Did you come down here because no one wanted you elsewhere?" I grinned self-consciously back at her image, my voice a feeble piping in comparison to hers. This is just real bad sci-fi. It's like real bad sci-fi. I've come to learn something besides drawing lines around dreams. I'm a painter from the subsurface who has decided that knowledge of actual growth is more important than the false growth of an untrue image upon a canvas. Wow. I wondered what the master would have said to hear me. This is bad, dudes. This is bad. Like, he just tried to put Socrates in the mouth of this character. This is fucking bad. You were right, she boomed back, her 6 arms engaged in complex wand mysterious movements, picking up and laying down instruments and tools in bewildering rapidity. Her attention elsewhere, yet enough remaining on me to hold me bound in an attraction as strong as a towing cable. She was a 40-foot Titan, her age unknowable, and then like the dime novel or just terrible fucking writer thing of every woman has the guy just ramrod stiff. God. So he and I might be similar, but fuck, he's tasteless and tacky, and this is cliche as fuck even by then. This is just desperate to be Harlan Ellison, and Harlan Ellison isn't even that good. She was a 40-foot Titan, her age unknowable. As I thought upon this and tried not to think of the immense beauty and life force of her, I suddenly realized she was hiding fear. I have a peculiar faculty for sensing hidden emotions. Of course you do. You would need it in order to be the narrator of a bad novelist's story. That bluff greeting had been a hidden wish to drive me from some danger. See, bad novelists think they need to tell you what characters that the narrator or point of view character, what these characters who aren't them feel. They feel they need to tell you what they feel instead of showing you because they can't show you. And so, mind you, he hasn't shown us anything. This is all tell. All tell. He hasn't shown anything. He told us that she has 6 arms, but he's not really describing, he's not showing what she's doing with the arms. He's just saying in complex, wand, mysterious movements, picking up and laying down instruments and tools. Are we from Mu? Do we know what tools and instruments she might have? No. And he's describing this to us, this rapidity, because his character evidently doesn't know, because he's a bad writer, because he doesn't know either. He's not seeing this. He's just writing it. This is nowhere close to seen and shown enough to be believably remembered. Remembered? Fuck off. As I thought upon this, that she was a 40-foot Titan, her age unknowable, and tried not to think of the immense beauty and life force of her, I suddenly realized she was hiding fear. Oh, and of course he has a fucking giantess kink. Of course he does. Just everything grotesque about the internet is going to be in this book, isn't it? Of course he has a giantess kink. This is just going to be nothing but monster girls, isn't it? I have a peculiar faculty for sensing hidden emotions. That bluff greeting had been a hidden wish to drive me from some danger, but I did not speak of it, for I read that caution in her, a very strong mental flow that fairly screamed, "Don't." This kind of fear was a wonder and a new thing to me, for danger was a thing long banished from our life. Then she spoke, reluctantly it seemed. "Go to the center of the Hall of Symbols. There you can ask a student or an instructor who will tell you all you need to know." The grip of the grip of the woman life, and her left my mind, and she was gone from my vision. Don't know what that means. As I turned from the telescreen, my mind insisted on visualizing that 6-armed embrace and its probable effect upon a man in love. She's 40 foot tall. Even if this guy's 6 feet tall. Proportionally, her hands are going to be 24 inches across. How big does this guy think his cock is? She could jerk his whole body off like a shake weight. Her hand is 2 feet across. This is gross. I shivered in spite of the warmth, but not from fear, from the desire to have my whole body jerked off like a shake weight. The blood of the Titans was alive, I thought, strangely and wonderfully alive. This is cringy and stupid. I stepped in a rollout at the curb, inspected the directory, then inserted a coin and dialed the number of the building that housed the Hall of Symbols. And why, if he has this imaginary, at least Edward Bulwer Lytton went to the effort of like making up a few like fake words that sounded Indo-European-ish. Like here, he's not even giving these places their Atlan names. He's not even going to that level of effort. Like if I'm reading sci-fi today and they didn't go to the effort of like inventing names for bullshit that everybody uses all the time, I'm not going to read any further than the first time you call something a wrench. The first time you call something a wrench or a pair of pants or a hat or any kind of common name in a sci-fi universe that's 1,000 years in the future, the first time you use a common 21st century noun, I'm out. And this was in at least 1945. Science fiction is at least 20 years old. Like, fuck. What's his name? Journey to the Center of the Earth. The War of the Worlds. Orson Welles was the 1800s, wasn't he? This is bad. The grip of the woman. Sorry. It's not what he says. I stepped into a rollout at the curb, inspected the directory, then inserted a coin and dialed the number of the building that housed the Hall of Symbols. Rollout is like the closest thing he's given us to like a sci-fi word, but he's implying that it's like just a car. Life here is just life in a big city, like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I leaned back with the automatic drive of the rollout, directed the car through the speeding traffic, its electric eye more efficient than my own. And so there you go, it's just a Tesla. Yes, much more efficient than my own at the moment, which were wandering over the figure of a very formed female on the walk whose upper part was the perfect torso of a woman, and whose lower part was a sinuously gliding 30 feet of brilliantly modeled snake. You could never have escaped her embrace of your own will once she had wrapped those life-generating coils around you. Life-generating coils? So sex times. So just everyone he comes across, he's going to be like, I got a boner for her, 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 I got a boner for her. Is this just what dudes were like in the 40s? It's in a lot of literature. Harry Dresden is an impossible read for me because Dresden's just like, she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Next woman to enter the scene. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. It becomes a comic in an ever larger, perkier tits to where eventually we're just talking about planet-sized tits. It's tacky. And I understand that it's 100 years old. I don't give a fuck. It's tacky. Dudes, it's tacky. There's a better way. And yeah, every woman is beautiful in her own right. But what you don't have to do is go, that woman gave me a boner. 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 It's fucking tacky. Jesus Christ. I thought upon it. He's going to keep talking about these fucking women. The gen of these veriforms was certainly more vital. Possibly because the Titans Technicons who lived here. I don't know what this fucking means. It's pissing me off. Perhaps the hybrids were naturally more fucking fecund of microspore. It had indeed been a day of brainstorms, I mused, when some old Technicon had realized that not only would a strong integrative field with a rich egged supply I'm skipping this whole fucking paragraph. Can't anymore. I can do it. Supply cause all matter to grow in an increased rate, but would also cause even the most dissimilar life gens to unite. It has been the realization that had resulted in various form life. Most of the crosses by this method had resulted in an increased strength and fertility. They now were more numerous than four-limbed men and often superior in mental ability. Automatically, my mind associated the embrace of the snake woman with the 6 arms of the giant Sybil of Info, and I decided that I understood why Arten Grow had driven me here with his scorn. If I didn't learn about life here, I never would anywhere. That had been what he had reasoned. Way down yonder in the Chattahoochee, never knew how much that muddy water meant to me. Jesus fuck. Soon I was striding between the pillared fangs of the great beast's mouth that was the door of the Hall of Symbols, where the school was converged. About was the bustle attendant to any roll-out-way station, bearers rushing, travelers gazing about lost in wonder at the vaulting glitter of sculptured pillars and painted walls, done by men of a caliber whose work Roe, like myself, cannot grasp entirely. Paintings and sculpture here hammered into the brain a message of the richness of life that immense mutual effort can give the lift unit, the pro. This richness of life was pictured in a terrible clash with evil, its opposite. The hot fecundity of life and health growth was a sensuous blow upon the eyes. The soul leaped to take a hand and make life yet more worthwhile. I could not cease gazing at the leaping vault of pictured busy figures, whose movements culminated in that offer to the spirit of man to join them in molding life to a fit shape. This doesn't fucking mean anything. God. And of course, he's using that faux, he's using this fucking pseudo 19th century highfalutin science-y sounding prose. And he wants to sound like he's read Plato. Oh, God, but he hasn't read any of the things that he knows are popular among science fiction writers. He's read a lot of science fiction, but he hasn't read the source information that got those science fiction writers to where they were. And so he's trying to write like he thinks Plato writes like, and it's so bad. Oh, my rapt study of the paintings was interrupted by that. So what he's basically saying is that there were good paintings down here and they made him feel insecure, and the reason his teacher wanted him to come down here was to see what quality art looks like. Fuck. My rapt study of the paintings was interrupted by the sound of a pair of hooves that clicked daintily to a stop beside me. Why daintily? Why not just click to a stop? Why does there need to be an adverb there? Why does it need to be they click daintily? You're not getting paid per word, Shaver. Why do you need a daintily there? They've stopped moving, and you didn't show us the horses. You just told us what they sounded like. The fuck does dainty horse hooves sound like? I glanced at the newcomer, who had stopped to stare up at the paintings, also in that curious way that people have when they see another crank his neck, and my glance became a stare. What was the use of aspiring to be an artist, my reason said, if those great masters who had placed that mighty picture book on the vaulting walls above were so easily outdone by the life force itself? What? Oh, Jesus Christ. There's another attractive female that he's talking around. She was but a girl. Always. I might not be able to finish this if he's going to be trying to fuck a 13-year-old. Younger than myself, but what a girl. Her body was encased in a transparent glitter, her skin a rosy pale purple. Her legs, mottled with white, ended in a pair of cloven hooves. And as my brain struggled to grasp her colorful young perfection, she wagged her tail. It was all too much. Speculating about the life-generating force possible in the veriform creatures was one thing, but having it materialize beside you was another thing entirely. Such a beautiful tale it was, of the softest, most beautiful fur. Not only, ugh. Yes, absolutely he did, Eric, and I was fucking right. It's just monster girl after monster girl after monster girl that he's got a boner for. Dudes, this is cringe and tacky. It's cringe and tacky. Fuck. What are you staring at? She asked. The paintings? I stuttered, then answered, the paintings, I guess. Yes, the paintings. Fuck, he's stammering! She's a 13-year-old girl, and he's stammering. This is too much. I'm a painter. Was a painter. I gave up. I couldn't talk. I had to look. Our author is telling us what he's like. He's a fucking pederastic loser who was made fun of in high school because his name is Dick Shaver. They're marvelous, aren't they? She declared enthusiastically. I always look at them when I come down to the school. I'm studying medicine, and I'll take the painting up there. And this is so funny because it's the exact same romantic fantasy that Edward Bulwer Lytton had when he was talking about how the Vrilya women, the Vrilya women are called Guy that the Guy pick their mates, and that only a certain class of low-bred American and British woman is willing to even approach a man, and that those women are undesirable. They're both going through the same power fantasy of being approached by an underage, pre-sexed female. Fuck. Dudes. Being approached by a 13-year-old girl for sex. It's the exact same. It's the exact same fucking fantasy as goddamn the Alice in Wonderland. There is a reason. There is a reason that the novelist was pushed out of society as a high artist. They're all fucking pedophiles. Historically, they were all fucking pedophiles. Every one of them. Too fucking socially inept to actually speak to women their own age. They had to be approached by teenagers, and then they had to abuse that relationship. I'm probably not going to finish this. This is fucking annoying. This it's not a trope. It's a cliche among the shitty writer of this time, that the only people who thought they were brave or interesting as writers were teenage girls who knew fuck all about fuck all. And then they fucked them. Ugh. The fuck is this strange girl doing talking to this guy? On her arm and breast, I saw the medical school insignia. Of course she's a nurse. Of course. Just every tacky cliche. A man's figure struggling with a great snake. Disease. It took brains to study medicine. Yeah, it can't be the fucking rod of Asclepius, can it? It has to be something else. But of course it's a man struggling with a snake, which kind of looks like the rod of Asclepius. I fucking hate this. This exquisite young thing. Exquisite. Jesus. He's making me say fucking the most horrible things. So full of gin force, so powerfully attractive. Was smart, too. And almost instantly, she proved herself to be extremely friendly and companionable. Yeah, very easy for you to prey on sexually. And almost instantly, she proved herself to be extremely friendly and companionable. She went on talking, describing, theorizing, in a gush of amiable conversation that left me dizzy, gasping, and admirably breathless. She told me everything about the paintings, the statues, and before I realized it, we were walking on together. She was full of all sorts of information, and it seemed she had taken it upon herself to be my guide, to teach me the meaning of everything we saw. Her cheerful chatter soon told me all about herself, her studies, the schools, the great doors that led to each one from the central gathering place of the school Rowlett ways. The hall was justly famous for these doors. Before us now was the door to the medical school, formed of pillaring figures struggling with the coils of snakes. Next to it was the marine school door, formed of a crab whose huge claws met to form the arch, a planetron, a pendulum device to tell of the nearness of bodies in space, formed the entrance to the school of space navigation. All the ages of science of immortal growth had combined here in the symbols that formed the many doors. Jesus. I'm not reading that. I'm not reading this dumb shit. Oh, but would you like me to prove to you that he hasn't actually read Plato? From 8 to footnotes. According to Plato, Atlantis was a continent located some 400 miles west of the Pillars of Hercules, Gibraltar. In the Timaeus, he describes it as an island larger than Asia Minor combined with Libya. Beyond it, he says, were an archipelago of lesser islands. Atlantis had been a powerful kingdom 9,000 years before the birth of Solon, from whom Plato heard of Atlantis reputedly as told to Solon by Egyptian priests, and its armies had overrun the lands when Athens alone had resisted. It has been a point of difference between students as to whether Plato referred to the Mediterranean lands as lands now inundated by the Mediterranean Sea or the lands surrounding the sea. Finally, the sea overwhelmed Atlantis and shoals marked the spot. In the Critias, Plato gives a history of the Commonwealth of Atlantis. There are many other traditions of lands located west of Gibraltar. The Greek Isles of the Blessed, or Fortunate Isles, the Welsh Avon, or Avalon, the Portuguese Antilia, or Isle of Seven Cities, and St. Brendan's Island. All except Avalon were marked on maps in the 14th and 15th century. The legends of the Sargasso Sea are said to have sprung from encounters with the Sea of Weeds, which periodically grew over the sunken continent. The shallowly sunken continent. The only problem is that Plato actually said 3,000 years before Solon, not 9,000. And anyway, the story is an obvious fictional allegory. So he hasn't actually read Plato. This is just things that people that want you to believe they've read Plato repeat all the time. You can hear Graham Hancock say all of that shit live today for just the ticket price or just the price of admission. You can hear him say it today behind a paywall somewhere on the internet. You can go to your boy Joe Rogan and you can hear him say that wrong thing today, right now, because there are people alive today that think that this is nonfiction because they lack critical thinking skills, which is hilarious because in the foreword it says, hey, use your critical thinking skills and prove me wrong. Okay, Plato said 3,000 years before Solon, not 9,000. Actually, I'm going to read all these footnotes now because it's fun. 9.3, the reader will note the curious use of the word fall in connection with gravity. Later in the story, the author elaborates on the subject of gravity in a very amazing manner, propounding a theory. Later in the story, the author elaborates. Now it's saying editor here. So is this our editor? Or is this our editor, like, justifying publishing this? Or is this our author pretending to be an editor of this guy that's writing in his head from a dream state? Don't actually care to know the answer to that. Elaborating on the subject of gravity in a very amazing manner in 1945 is just a stupid sentence. Propounding a theory which your editor has examined in detail and by which he has been utterly confounded. This glib focusing and deflecting of gravity. You're an editor and owner and publisher of a fucking magazine of amazing stories. The fuck do I give? The fuck do I give about whether you understand gravity in a meaningful way? What fuck do I care? This glib focusing and deflecting of gravity your editor cautions you to accept in the literal sense until Neon's story gives us more on the subject of gravity. Also, he keeps changing how he spells Mouton. 9.4. Curious as to the literal meaning of the word topless, we wrote to Mr. Shaver for a better description of the buildings of Sub-Atlan. He revealed that as Mouton Mayan's memory told him, they were topless in the sense that they were roofless. Sub-Atlan is located in one of the giant near-surface caverns that underlies surface Atlan, or Atlantis, which is mostly forest with scattered large buildings. Why is this not in the narrative? Since the elements are not a factor, almost all buildings are constructed without roofs to admit a maximum of light. Sub-Atlan must be presented a strange appearance, for no two buildings were architecturally alike. Some of them huge spheres or multi-sided geometric shapes, tall spires, or merely rambling structures of no apparent intentional design. Why the fuck is that not in the fucking manuscript? The reason for this was to provide variety to interest the eye, which would otherwise be jaded by constant contemplation of the unending sameness of gray cavern walls and roof of stone. Okay, well, that was decent writing, so it clearly wasn't Shaver who wrote it. This is obviously our Ray Palmer, is our editor here. Why the fuck did he not insist that that be in the manuscript? An editor would have edited this. Fuck. 10.5. When asked to describe the Titans, Mr. Shaver sent us the following notation, which is perhaps the oddest of all his communications. When queried about its oddity, he merely replied that he had answered your question and gave no further explanation. We wrote, our great race, the Atlans, together with the Titans, our allies, and often our fellow citizens, swarm through all unknown space and watch ever for the birth of new sons. Then, too, there are the Nortons, but the Norman shun all suns, and can only be found where the sun rays shine not. When our Atlan Cons hear of or see a new sun born, our ships flash swiftly through the void to test the rays of poisonous emanations. When they find clean heat from a surface shell of pure carbon, fast upon their trail come the first great colonization ships. For our race is fecund beyond imagination, and there is little death from any cause. This is dumb. It's dumb. Obviously, this is nothing from the racial memory of Mutan Mion, but seemingly something from an Atlan himself. Here and there, through Mr. Shaver's correspondence with the editor, such departures from the identity of Mutan Mion occur, and we can only suggest that Mr. Shaver's racial memory contacts extend not only to the culture man, but to other beings as well. Mr. Shaver himself cannot explain, and in many instances is unaware that such extensions exist. It's called being a bad writer and not being able to stay in character because you don't know what your character knows because you are a bad writer. The reader will here again note several inexplicable references, such as poisonous carbon and a surface shell of pure carbon. Later in the story, Mutan Mion tells of these things in great detail, and in them gives still another of the amazing scientific theories that stagger the imagination. Scientific theories that stagger the imagination are called fiction and stupid. 11.6. Obviously, variforms are not natives of other planets, but hybrids developed from many Obviously. From everything we were shown in that first chapter. Obviously, variforms are not natives of other planets, but hybrids developed from many interplanetary life forms mated with Titans and Atlans by deliberate applications of mutative rays in the laboratories of Muse Technicons. Obviously. It is extremely interesting to note that all have the same status as citizens. Obviously. 12.7. Moving connected vehicles on the ways and walks which carried the bulk of pedestrian travel. 13.8. EXD is Atlan for eggs disintegrants. X disintegrants, or energy ash. Why the fuck not just energy ash? X disintegrants? That's a stupid fucking word. And it requires Latin. So why would they call it eggsed? It was the content of the beneficial vibrance. It is the space dust from which all matter grows into being. Literal space dust. Mutan Mion amplifies the eggsed theory later on in the story. Okay, so Richard Shaver thinks that space dust is literal space dust, its own compound of specific thing. I'm reading the work of another very, very stupid person. 14.9. Here again, we had to appeal to Mr. Shaver for amplification. We certainly got it, and along with it, some amazing thoughts. Rho, he says, is a thing of simple, repetitive life pattern easy to understand and control. To row you is to make you do things against your will. A large generator of thought impulse can be set up to row a whole group of people. R-O. Row, R-O-W, the boat is modern, and the meaning has become physical force and not mental force. R-O, the people, was an ancient method of government. Romantic was the name of such a government. Romantic. Science of man life patterning by control. Oh my God. It is the same concept as used by some scientists when they say hypnotically conditioned. It is not necessarily an evil government method, but it is one that was necessary. Any person is Ro who is weaker than the mental impulses about him. Men are Ro today because they are not self-determining, though they think they are. We are parts of a huge juggernaut, and we are Ro in consequence. The determining forces that make our thought what it is are from outside when we are Ro, from inside when we are men or gods. This is so dumb. Why did I choose to do this? Because I wanted to do it. 1410. I wanted to see if I could bend my genius to proving that this is bullshit, but I didn't have to work very hard. 1410. This is indeed a strange comparison. Evil is the opposite of live, the inference being that to be evil is to die. No. Oddly or significantly, evil is live spelled backward. That's how he got there. God, this guy's dumb. 1611. This insignia lives today in the legend of Apollo. According to the Greeks, Apollo was a son of Zeus himself. Disease is typified in the legend by the python which Apollo killed. Etymologically, his name signifies one who drives away disease. Rocher's derivation names him as the sun god. Using Mr. Shaver's ancient language, he is authority, energizer, power source of man's growth. This is startling when we discover, upon studying the legends of Apollo, that he was variously called god of prophecy, god of agriculture, ruler of seasons, keeper of flocks, rearer of boys, sponsor of gymnastics, the helper, healer, and seer, averter of evil, god of song and music, leader of the muses, embarker and disembarker, god of streets and way, one who stands before the house as protector from violence and disease, originator and protector of civil order, founder of cities and legislation. Yeah, because Apollo, over the course of like 1,000 years, came to assume all of the necessary sacrifices of all of the lesser gods. Guys, idiots, Shaver and Palmer here are deeply stupid people, desperately cherry picking. Desperately cherry picking. I did a better job showing how that symbol would be a precursor to the rod of Asclepius that he's referring to here, but not actually referring to. Apollo, says Titan Meon, was a son of one of the Titans of Mu. Of course he was. Fuck. This is bad. Anyway, read not Rob Longshore, where I do this, but well. Almost the exact same thing, thematically, artistically, genre, almost exactly the same. But so much better. Just so much better. Something you can actually suspend your disbelief to. Fuck. Something that rewards going, is he pulling my leg? Is there really a church in Genoa called the Castelletto? Yes, there is, and it's beautiful. Is he pulling my leg that there's a scriptorium in Pavia? Yes, and it's beautiful. Is he pulling my leg that there was a war between Berengar of Friuli and Louis of Provence? Yes, he was. And that war resulted in Louis of Provence being renamed Louis the Blind, because he lost eventually. He won first, and then he lost. C'est la vie. Such is the way of fickle nobles. All right, do we have any questions, comments, concerns? I know only two of you stuck around long enough to have seen much of it, heard any of that. But do we have anything that we would like to add to my lampooning of this piece of shit book? Ooh, it got cold while I wasn't looking. How'd it get cold? It get cold at night. I was gonna say at least he stopped talking about his boners, but the editor wouldn't have any reason to talk about his boners. That actually hurt, and I broke it. I fixed it. That trope of dudes, dudes in fantasy, because there wasn't a difference back then in sci-fi and fantasy. He was publishing an amazing stories, right? Sci-fi and fantasy were both uh, from our genre distinctions hadn't arrived yet. Um, this this book was being published at the same time that The Hobbit was still influencing everyone, still being read widely, rather. And the influencing everybody is present tense. Influencing will be influential. It is still influential, but it is not at the level of influence that you are accustomed to, where the fantasy races are established and effectively in established in tradition. There is no tradition yet of what a fantasy world and how fantasy world building works. There is no, in other words, Wizards of the Coast. So, Amazing Stories, Ray Palmer, is setting the foundation for all of this stuff. His magazine is setting the foundations for why there is an established and accepted style of world building, why there is a traditional fantasy, why that, thank you, Eric, why there's a traditional fantasy setup, dwarves, elves, humans, orcs, etc. There is that because people trying to explain the chimera of Greek mythology and the ancient world mythology, like the Abzu bird, like griffins. If you're reading Rob with me, or if you're paying attention to Rob with me, trying to explain these things in terms of 1945 cloning ideas about how cloning could be done, or genetic admixture could be done. In 1945, these jinns, life machines, are just what they are. But we now know that there's no Dr. Moreau recombination machine that you can do to just take genetic code. There is no DNA sequence for horse legs that you can put on a frog to get a frog with horse legs, or the other way around. You can't give a frog a horse, or you can't give a frog a horse's back legs with a frog legs gene. That's just, or frog leg, yeah, gene. It doesn't work that way. They didn't know that in 1945. So they had a lot of stupid ideas about the kinds of things that you could do scientifically. They had a lot of ideas for technologies that are just magic. They're just not real. They're just impossible. But he doesn't know that. And so we've fallen into a fucking subterranean of Atlantis, in the hollow earth of Atlantis for some reason. Fucking monster girl fetish story. It's annoying. I find it just very difficult to believe. I find it very difficult to believe that girls were any more difficult to meet in 1945 than they are today. If you're not a pervert. There's a reason that porn was illegal in this time in American history. It's because staying inside all day and thinking about girls is deeply troublesome behavior. Rob came to me while I was milling brake calipers. This guy talks about how his Mouton, whatever, came to him. Imagine how taboo it was at the time. Well, it couldn't have been that taboo. It was in this fucking magazine. Taboo? No. Risque? Yes. Sex sells. Risque sells. Risque is that same drama that we were talking about on the internet. It wasn't taboo, right? It wasn't taboo. They're not human. Of course we can fuck them. That was in the 40s, a big part of flying saucer literature. I mean, it's in Disneyland of the Gods, the first book I did for Spoopyween. He talks about it. A huge part of contactee literature is erotica with aliens. A huge part, don't get it twisted, a massive part of Christian mysticism was erotica with Jesus. Huge part. Massive part of Christian mysticism was explicit eroticism with Jesus. Erotica, not even eroticism, erotica. Like 50 Shades of Grey, but Jesus is gray. Julian, is that his name? Well, elites can be deviant like that. They can afford for people to say yes. People like this guy can only fantasize about the deviance, right, that they think is happening. This guy can only fantasize about it. This guy most certainly isn't writing what he knows. The first rule, folks, of creative writing, the first rule of all storytelling, all creative art, all creative storytelling, is to tell the story you know. And the story that this author is telling us of a guy who is bad at the thing he's chosen to do, refused an education, a formal education that would make him good at the things that he wants to be, and obsessed with women that are outside his literal species. This guy's effectively a rapper. Did I say that out loud? Just hangs out at strip clubs all day. I'm impressed that Logan actually referenced something that I talked about at the beginning of the video that took him an hour of effort. Now, he accidentally saw that part, but he made an effort to insult me at least. I saw The Wizard of Oz. That was the only word of that I read. 2 words, 3 words actually. But an effort was made to reach into his pockets and try to insult me. His pockets aren't very deep, but an effort was made. So this is going to try to do the same thing. It's going to try to take us through this fictional world, and it's going to try to be a world-bearing quasi narrative. So it's going to try to do the narrative fiction thing, or sorry, not the narrative fiction thing, the literary fiction thing. Literary fiction doesn't have a plot. This book is not going to have a plot. Maybe, maybe not. It's not any different, Eric, than what we were talking about with parents and their children earlier today. People want to maintain the power they have, and they want to express it in the ways that they're able. Are they sick in the head, or are they just human? It's like they say that power corrupts, therefore, absolute power must necessarily corrupt absolutely. Damn it, I hope that that's not what I see. It's like tonight I was sitting at a pizza cottage, and I had a whole bunch of screens bombarding me with what normal people watch on TV, and one of them was the news. And they just showed up on the screen that President Trump went and visited Japan's new prime minister today. And I was like, oh, Japan's prime minister is a lady. And then I asked the beautiful and thoughtful and intelligent woman that I was speaking with, I asked her, because she wasn't born in the States. I asked her, why do you think we're so reticent to elect a woman? And she really thought about it, and we really worked at it for a while to really get at it, use lots of different examples from other countries and how that has gone in the other countries from her perspective and what she knows about it from her family. Because this is how we learn things. This is how we know things. This is how we organize and perceive the world. It's by what we've been told by authorities that we trust. And our parents should be authorities that we trust. This is the way of the world. This is the way it's meant to be. The whole governments are built on the assumption that your parents are going to teach you how to engage in the world. And what we kind of came down on is that Americans have this fundamental distrust of women, this interesting fundamental distrust of women in leadership roles. I don't really remember why I started thinking about that. I started talking about it. I had a plot that I was trying to get to, a plot twist. And like we were talking about how Elizabeth of England, the first, or Victoria, or many of these women had very long reigns. Many queens had very long reigns that were very prosperous for their economies. I think I figured out. I think I figured out how I was where I was trying to go with this. But they do all seem to be typified by excesses of rule bending for people close to the female ruler. That proximity to her equals in some way immunity to certain rules. But we also agreed that that's not a female thing. It seems there does seem to be a class divide. Um, so like in the United States, there's a very easy and very obvious division between true Republicans and true Democrats. And you can tell when a Republican is actually a Democrat by nature but has a lot of money and so had to run Republican because of the optics. Um, Trump is that. And so um, and Trump's Republicans, the Republicans that became Republican with Trump, many of the grassroots, it's actually, I think it's clever, but it is more appropriate to call them astroturf roots. the they were called Tea Party politicians. Um, well, not a flip flopping. I'm talking about temperament, not public portrayal. Their actual person, their personhood, their temperament as people. Rich people who ideologically think like a Democrat cannot run as Democrats. They can't run as Democrats because the Democrat Party won't support them because they're independently wealthy. The Democrat Party needs you to be a self-made community wealthy person, a person who's wealthy because of a community of financial supporters like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the perfect example. He didn't work as a Democrat because he didn't have enough money, so he was a socialist until he made all those millions in book sales, and now he's a perfect Democrat because he's an independently wealthy person whose wealth is entirely dependent on his being the position in government that he has. So he can't go anywhere either laterally or vertically. He can't climb, and he can't move within the Congress because of where his money is made. That's the same for Republicans. They can't move laterally or vertically because they're too rich. So that our government works because it sticks these people into one job, one spot where they can be observed with their money. Um, but there's a divisor between how these different groups in the United States, they're called Republicans and Democrats. These people naturally filter into one of two ways of being because of their temperament. I don't know what they're called overseas. I don't give a shit about other places. Canada, don't give a fuck about the way your government splits in half. In France, it split right in half between the staunch Catholics and the non-Catholics. The Catholics were called the conservatives, and they sat on the right wing of Louis's court. The non-Catholics were called the liberals because they were free of the church, and they sat on the left wing. So when you talk about right wing and left wing politics, you're describing the court of Louis the 13th. Might have been the 14th. A Louis. Now, I know the style of government. I don't give a fuck how it breaks down by name. I don't care what the names of the parties are. Because there are only two temperaments that actually survive as professional politicians. There are two temperaments. The first temperament gives a shit about law and order, and it's there because of law and order. The left and right thing is describing Louis the 13th, that his actual government. So when we use those terms today, it's because there actually are only two temperaments in professional government. People who sit on the left side of the king because they're with the established order or against the established order, and the people who sit on the right side of the king because they're for the established order. This is the only way that governments divide. Professional politicians divide by people who are for the established order or against the established order. These are the only things. And the people who are against the established order, people who are against the established order, whether they're the Queen of England or the President of Chile or Hillary Clinton, if they're against the established order from a temperament standpoint, they allow their friends and families to get away with crimes. It's the only difference. That is the only difference between these people, whether they're willing to prosecute their friends and families for crimes. Republicans aren't perfect, but like we were talking about it. Well, nepotism and cronyism happens on both sides. It's whether they're willing to prosecute. If they're not willing to prosecute, they're Democrats. If they're willing to prosecute, they're probably Republicans. Because Republicans still make sure that their kids have jobs. I mean, we elected two Republicans with the same first and last name. So nepotism happened there, but it's a popular vote. And so that part is irrelevant. We all want to be in a position where we can get our kids a good job. That's why we get good jobs. That's why we work so hard, is so our kids don't have to. Everyone has always done that. We absolutely cannot hold people negatively accountable for something that we would do in the same position. Can't do it. That's called being a hypocrite. For example, writing a story about monster women. My novel is also full of monster people. I mean, it's called The Lesvos Serpent. I mean, it's right there in the title. What we have to do is look ourselves in the face and say, are we against the established order and willing to prosecute our friends and family for wrongdoing? If there are only two ways that it's ever been done, there's a third way it can be done, and it can be that easy. It can be that easy because we want progress and innovation from the way it's been done. Because the way it was done in the 40s was bad, especially for women. Like, one of the things the woman I was talking to today brought up, she goes, well, what happens when the female president is paid the same amount as a male president? What happens? Are they going to give her 70% of the paycheck? It's a good question. I started to be like, well, that's an average, and there are reasons that happens, including the women being willing to take less. But what you might find happen is that woman accept less. She might accept less. Because a lot of women just go, I'm happy to have the position. I don't need the pay. I did that. But temperamentally, that's a female thing. Because females know that they have vaginas, titties, and mouths. They can always make money. And so the argument, I'm not coming at that woman. She may or may not hear this. I am absolutely not coming at her argument because it's an interesting one. But the argument at the top of corporations, where it's like this female CEO is only accepting 70% of the wage that a man would make, that means that her corporation has 30% more wages to give to the people in the bottom. Is that automatically a bad thing that she's making less money? Maybe, because it might mean that she's less invested to do the best she can for those people, thinking that she's paying them more. So maybe she's not working a 16-hour day to make sure their lives are perfect. Maybe she's only working an 8-hour day. Maybe she's only working a 2-hour day. We don't know. She's a hypothetical. She could be as bad or as good as we want her to be. So really, she's just useless to talk about. She's a rhetorical device that I can use to convince you of anything. That women are good, that women are bad, that presidents should be female, that presidents should never be female. A hypothetical could do anything. That's the point of this book. A hypothetical can mean anything. That's why he reaches to Plato and false images. It's right at the beginning. He's reaching to the inability to express an artistic idea that you have only fully realized. Right at the beginning of the book, when he's talking about, I'm going to go down into the city and I'm going to get an education because the book needs a plot and I'm a fucking loser. Well, the I'm a fucking loser plot in the 1940s was pretty common, actually. The trying to reach to magic surrealism, where just normal, even loser characters have extraordinary things happening to them, that was a trope back then. I'm sure we could think of art today that does it. I can't think of anything right now where just a loser suddenly has a magic sword. I can't think of anything because I just don't watch that shit. But I'm sure it exists. I bet you Harry Potter is that. Because again, she is a hack. What's her name? J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling was reading this garbage. That's how she arrived at Harry Potter, was work like this. And yeah, Harry Potter's a fucking loser who isn't even the chosen one at the end. He's just a loser who happens to be a wizard. What else? I'm sure we could think of hugely popular. I bet you that's what I didn't watch it, but I bet you that's what the Jon Snow character arc is. I know that's the fucking one-eyed or three-eyed Raven character arc. He's a kid who was shoved out a window, so he's a loser throughout the whole course of the thing, but he just happens to be the magic super Raven boy. Whatever the hell that means. I didn't watch the show and I do not fucking care. J.K. Rowling is a hack. A hack and an evil person, but a hack, most assuredly. She's from London. You can't think she's genuine. Please. And it is approaching time for me to move on to the next thing. I got 7 days to die to record. But I'm reading and commenting on this live. Hello, Miko. I'm reading and commenting on this live because well, I could do it to my camera without it being live, but I'm reading and commenting on this in front of a camera because doing it alone just pisses me off. And then I'm gonna be fucking bitching about it all week. I don't know how it's a grind, Eric. It's what I would be doing anyway. I just happen to be recording. The way I play games and the way I read books is not unique, maybe, but certainly I make it entertaining for me. And so if it's entertaining for me, it's probably entertaining for somebody else. Just like with kink, where there's one person who likes it, likes to do it, there's one person who likes to receive it, and where there's one person who likes to do it and one person who likes to receive it, there's one person who likes to watch. And where there's one and one and one, there's an infinite number. Really not a content storm. I just make my day productive. I'm just journaling my life, one productive output at a time. When I was writing Rob, it was 12 to 16 hours a day. When I wasn't writing on Rob, I was eating, sleeping, or fucking. It's just the kind of dude I am. The work's not going to get done by not doing it. And if you throw enough shit at the wall, eventually it'll start to stick. You might just have to ruin the wall first. You might have to take a tool to the wall until it has enough pits and texture for the shit to stick to. I'm not telling you what to do. Just working. You guys, I'm not asking anybody to keep up with me. I'm not asking anybody to watch all of it. I'll be there when you feel like it. Most of the lives, mostly now, are just my dumb face. Outside of these readings, I just don't have anything to say to anybody anymore. The hello, goodbye, I don't care that you're sorry that you didn't show up for however long you didn't show up loop is tedious, exactly the same every single time, and I'm out of patience for it. Sure, I'm a fun hang. That's what I keep telling you. It's about the internet is about being a fun hang. It's about creating an environment where people can come and they feel like they don't need to leave. They don't feel compelled to leave. They don't feel like they're missing something somewhere else. I keep my audience engaged sometimes. Usually I'm trying to disengage my audience. Usually I'm trying to make them bored. Because when you're bored is when you have the real thoughts. Girl, you are supposed to be asleep. You know what we're doing? We're shooting the shit. I just read a really, really, really bad book, well, a chapter of a really bad book. Now I'm shooting the shit with my guys. We talk sort of the thematics of it. And eventually I have to get out of here. Yeah, we've been talking about lots of stuff. I'm a knowledgeable guy. I can do this. Yeah, well, basically, yeah, if it's not mine, it's trash. Rachel gets it. Look at how fucking cool I am, dudes. Bet you can't do that. It's hard to alternate them. There we go. Sit on it and spin. I could have two of you sit on it and spin. I'm sleepy and trying to get silly because I'm about to do some 7 days. Man, I can just do it so fast. Look at how efficient I am. You wouldn't even know until I went. Stupid. What's the other one? You have to have another person. Here, put your hand in here like this. And then you open it up like that. It looks like a vagina. All babies that start with letter R have to be, we're supposed to be asleep right now. Oh yeah, I got Roman hands and Russian fingers. Took me years to figure out what the fuck that meant. That sounds really fucking racist. What the hell does Roman hands mean? Russian fingers? What the fuck does that mean? Took me a really long time. Like, an absurdly long time to figure out what the hell that meant. I'm not proud of that. What does it mean? Roaming and rushing. Roaming hands and fingers that rush to places they're not supposed to be. I'm very dumb. It took me a really long time. Yeah, a really long time to figure that out. Roman hands. What does that mean? He's got big hands? Are his hands a different color than his body? What does that mean? Well, yeah, you're supposed to be asleep. Butt cheeks. Agreed. All right, children. We don't have any more questions, comments. It's the first chapter. But if we don't have any other things that we would like to lampoon about, go back to sleep, Rachie. We don't have anything else that we would like to lampoon or get me ranting about from within what we just read. I have other shit to do. I love you guys. Oh, I love you guys, but the sitting around with the thumb up my ass thing doesn't work for me. I start to get anxious, and then I start to get pee-pee dancy, and then I start to do dumb things with my hands. And then I just start to sing and ignore you. So I'm going to do something creative. Look, very obviously to me sometimes, my parents held me to just a different standard of personhood. My parents prepared me for a different kind of engagement as an adult than yours prepared you for. I don't know why they prepared me for this kind of engagement. They didn't and don't live like this. My parents prepared me for a higher standard of life than that which they led, which they continue to lead. They prepared me for a higher standard of thought, a higher standard of self-conception, and a higher standard of self-respect, self-excellence, and self-awareness, and self-responsibility. then they lived, then they maintained, then they held my siblings to even. Um, and so I do actually understand that you and I are different people. What I don't understand is that so few of you have understood the pricelessness of the utility of having a shaggy philolitea in your life. You will, too late, more than likely. They say that we don't really know what we've got until it's gone. And unfortunately for you, I just don't pathologize the what if. Because if God exists in the cracks, and we are going to be listening to a book trying very hard to recontextualize for you, badly, but trying very hard to recontextualize for you ancient religion while I'm teaching you about ancient religion. I am attacking the problem of trying to open your fucking eyeballs from every angle I can possibly conceive to do it. I can possibly imagine at every level of previous engagement with the intellectual and the serious and the severe. And I am aware that more of you are going to turn away than really appreciate what you've got. And I also understand that shaking a sleepwalker is how you create more problems than you solve. So efforts are being made, all right? They're the best efforts that I've got. But that doesn't mean they're good enough. I know that. So I will just ask you what I asked Eric, or what I asked Alec a few weeks ago. Give me some fucking slack.